Another piece from my book, Nani Palkhivala, a role model that I have edited. It's in memory of Mr. Nani Palkhivala. I read today an article titled Nani A Palkhivala, R.I.P. by Goolam E Vahanvati, who was one time Attorney General for India. It reads, "What do you say about a man who has been showered with every conceivable form of praise? What do you say about a man whose multifaceted personality and diverse achievements have been chronicled in so many different ways? How do you put in prose a tribute to a man whose mastery over the written and spoken word was legendary? How do you encapsulate in an obituary a tribute which would run into various chapters? You can only try by painting a picture using the colors from your own personal experiences and fond memories of the incredible person that was Nani Palkhivala. You are first required to pay humble deference to the majesty of God, who can create a person like Nani Palkhivala, give him liberty to write his own history, and then order that even such a person shall become a part of history. You then acknowledge the omnipotence of God, who liberates the soul from the body and yet ensures that the spirit and fragrance will live on forever. In a meeting organized by the Parsi Panchayat on Nani's birthday, I said that I had reliable information that whenever God creates a Parsi, he spends a lot of time over it because he knows that the product has to be unique and one of its kind. But 83 years ago, when God created Nani Palkhivala, he spent even more time on the drawing board. He drew on all his experience and expertise because he knew that he was going to create a person who was going to be unique and immortal. He came from a very humble background. He worked his way up. His rise at the bar was meteoric and phenomenal. After Nani got his law degree in 1944, he appeared for the Advocate Original Side (OS) exam in 1946, one of the most difficult examinations at that time. Only a handful passed every year. Between 1944 and 50, in a short span of 6 years, Nani had already made his mark. There had never been such a phenomenal rise at the Bombay bar. His knowledge of the fundamentals of the law gained during the time he spent studying for an Advocate Original Side examination stood him in good stead throughout his life. He was at perfect ease with every branch of the law, whether it was constitutional law, corporate law, or income tax law. For income tax law, he had a special affinity, and the book he wrote is one of the greatest treatises relating to the law and practice of income tax. One of the solicitors who noticed the talent of the promising lawyer was Rustamji Gagrat of Gagrat and Company. Rustamji briefed Nani in several requisition matters in the Bombay High Court in the early 50s. The government of Maharashtra used to requisition vacant flats under the provisions of the Bombay Land Requisition Act. This gave rise to a spate of petitions challenging such requisitions. These were early days of our republic. The constitution was new and the law was developing. Nani worked overtime and mastered constitutional and writ law. Nani was in the thick of this litigation. After the initial break, he never looked back. When he wrote his book, The Law and Practice of Income Tax, to which his senior, the legendary Sir Jamshedji Kanga, generously lent his name, a litigation was commenced against him in the Madras High Court, claiming that Palkhiwala's book had infringed the copyright of the previous publications. Rustamji went to Madras as the solicitor on Nani's behalf. Rustamji used to love telling the story of how Palkhivala gave evidence. By the time his evidence was over, so was the case. Under severe cross-examination, Palkhivala rattled off chapters and verse of the legal precedents, citing volumes with years and pages of written citations. All the references were correct. His memory was breathtaking. It was his capacity to memorize and rattle off facts, figures, and quotations that captivated audience all over the world, whether it was at his budget meeting or at American universities. When he was the Indian ambassador to America, he used to lecture at several American universities. He spoke without a scrap of paper in front of him, and as usual, he rattled off dates, events, facts, figures, and quotations. The Americans were incredulous. We are told that some of them decided to check the quotations and called for the transcripts of a speech. It was found that every single statement was entirely accurate. Years ago, I was doing a personal case for him in relation to the housing society in which he lived. Around this time, when he had released one of his books, he sent a copy with a personal message inscribed in his inimitable handwriting. He also made it a point to spare some time and pass on valuable words of encouragement. One of the things he told me was to avoid taking conflicting work. There is a simple formula, but it is difficult to implement, he said. Just say no and stick to it. These were the little touches that made him so special. There was a certain kindness about him which only people who came into contact with him can really appreciate. When High Court counsel were required to clear their chambers in the High Court and Excise, Nani came over from Bombay House to clear his papers. Shortly thereafter, he sent me an envelope. It was a cutting in a newspaper of 1946, the results of the Advocate original side exam, the most difficult exam lawyers ever had to go through. Only a couple passed. 2 did that year, Nani and my father. He had preserved the cutting for almost 40 years, and he sent it to me with a note saying, "You would like to keep this." The skill of an advocate must be judged having regard to his ability to persuade. You can persuade if you can communicate. The ability to communicate depends on how simple you make it for the judges. In this regard, Palkhivala was peerless and incomparable. He made things sound so convincing, and he made every other point of view look so ridiculous that the judges were invariably almost swept off their feet. He mesmerized you. If he could hypnotize an audience of thousands, you can understand what a spell he could cast over the court. This was to such an extent that some judges confessed that they had to take time off after Nani finished to give judgments because they had to wait for the spell to wear off. His humility was genuine. It was never contrived. I must relate one story which illustrates this. When Nani Palkhivala was a student, he supplemented his income by selling tickets at the tote window at the turf club. Years later, he had occasion to go back to the turf club. By that time, he had become a famous person. The tote manager remembered Nani Palkhivala and went to meet him. Nani recognized him. The tote manager was overawed, but Nani greeted him warmly and said, "How are you, sir?" This was Nani for you. The manager was overwhelmed to have Nani Palkhivala greeting him with, "How are you, sir?" His simplicity had to be seen to be believed. The man who was one of the towering seniors at the Bombay bar often turned up wearing a junior advocate's gown. It did not matter to him. He did not need the trappings of a senior's gown. He was above all this. Later on in life, his appearances in the Bombay High Court, because of his various other preoccupations, became few and far between. But whenever Palkhivala turned up, word spread like wildfire. Nani is here, they said, and the courts soon got crowded with people anxious to hear the great advocate. The humanness of the man always came through. This was the man you went to meet in Bombay House on the top floor for a major opinion, the man who took you in punctually. You felt the vibes, you felt the greatness, it was in the air, it was electric. And then, when the conference was over and you were still dazzled, he led you out, opened the door for everyone, and accompanied you to the lift. You were simply overwhelmed. Of all the tributes that one can pay him, perhaps the one which requires to be emulated most is that he never spoke ill of people, particularly those who were known to be upset with him, and made no bones about it. He just did not respond. All you can say at the end is that they will probably not make another in this mold for a long time. And for the fact that you knew him, worked with him, and interacted with him well, for that you will just have to be eternally grateful. When we are born, we come here with a return ticket. Life is one of the only products in which there is always an expiry date. The only difference is that there is no law which requires the expiry date to be printed on the product. Therefore, when we are born, the day on which we will go is embedded on our forehead. Unfortunately, we cannot read that date. People around us cannot read that date. It is God who decides when He takes you away. God has decided to take Nani Palkhivala away, but has ensured that his spirit will live forever.